All right. Welcome, everybody. I don't want to interrupt the amazing conversations you're probably having all about our budgets and our future. But now we're going to talk about it together. We're going to try and keep this as pithy as possible because we know there's probably things for you to enjoy other than this, but we appreciate you being here. The purposes of the town hall, as I have understood the history, is so that no one is surprised at the annual meeting in 2 months or a month when we pass all of these things we're about to tell you about. And it provides an opportunity for you all to engage with the leadership and ask questions and suggest changes or considerations we should be making that we haven't yet made, so that then when the Governance Council goes back at the end of this month and finalizes stuff for the annual meeting on June 18th, you have been heard. All right? So we're going to start, I'm just going to run through the agenda a little bit, and then I'm going to invite Lori up to pray us in. So we're going to start with an opening prayer and an accessibility conversation. So if you didn't get a chance to be a part of that conversation on the 30th of April, we'll get a recap of that. Eric Smith, our president, couldn't be here in person with us, so he has recorded a sort of state of the church video, which will be great for us to enjoy. And then we'll have the council's update from Kelly Bradbury from Finance and Ops and Liz Chandler from Ministry Council. And then we will get into some leadership changes in the nominations for next year, followed by the budget conversation, which will include a piece from our generosity team leader, Judy Jutras. And then we'll pray us out and we'll be ready to go. Ready? All right.
God, we roll from worship into meeting, into play, and we expect that your presence will be with us in each of those spaces. So help us to come together now as a community that cares about its future, that trusts that there is leadership within, that knows its purpose and believes in a greater good. Ground us with a spirit of gratitude for all that is and all that is to come. Challenge us when we need it, and offer comfort in those tender moments. God, as we gather, as we settle in, and as we dream together, we pray in your many names. Amen. So, greetings to each of you who are here and also those who are online. Folks in person, you can't actually see them, but we have an online host who will field any of their thoughts and questions. That seems to work well, and they can actually see at least who's here. So it's a start in the direction of bringing all the pieces together, which is our transition to accessibility. A couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation that was facilitated by the Wabash Democracy and Public Discourse Fellows. They are working on a report of that conversation. We had Fellowship Hall packed with about 70 people who were engaged in that conversation. We do have participant guides. If you were not present and when you would like some background information about the many topics, including what to do about a wall that is behind you, what to do about these steps and those steps, what to do about how to be accessible with hearing and with entryways and with all sorts of other versions of accessibility. This little guide has a beginning for people, and then we will continue that conversation as a congregation in various settings. So stay tuned for that. Are there any immediate questions about that? I know it's still murky, but as soon as that report comes, we will totally share, and then we will delve in together as a community. Okay, we're good with that. All right. So that means we are at Eric Smith, and if all goes well, he will pop up here in 1 second.
Hi, I'm Eric Smith, President of the St. Peter's Governance Council. As we move towards the close of our governance year at St. Peter's, our Governance Council is reflecting on the past year and planning for the future. And I want to share some of our council's recent observations about the state of our St. Peter's community. Over the past year, our St. Peter's community evolved and grew stronger, and the positive changes and trends you'll hear more detail about today during our council and team updates were driven by you, our especially active congregation. Our council and team leaders noticed and appreciated that the number of congregants volunteering to serve our congregation and the wider community increased over the past year, with our teams and councils benefiting from the diverse presence and perspectives of congregants whose time with St. Peter's ranges from a few decades to a few months. Because of your presence, we were able to engage in more events and activities as a church while continuing to be mindful of our commitment to maintain sustainable pacing and thoughtful organization as we plan and come together more often as a congregation. In addition to sharing more of our time and talent together, we increased our commitment to sharing the financial resources necessary to maintain our building and grounds and compensate our St. Peter's staff as we learn more about what it means to operate a church in an inflationary economic environment. Our council also appreciated our continued commitment to grow and evolve as an open and affirming congregation, having many thoughtful conversations about what open and affirming means as we engage with each other and the community around us and continue striving to create a welcoming spiritual home for all. We on the Governance Council thank you for your presence and your commitment to our congregation over the past year, and we hope the more detailed updates that follow will inform your planning regarding how you'll engage with and enjoy our St. Peter's community over the coming year. Thank you.
You don't want to watch what's after this? I think we should. All right, so I want to invite up Kelly Bradbury, our Vice President and the Chair of our Finance and Operations Committee, to offer us an update.
That's going to be a hard commercial to follow. So, no, Isaiah, he's intent on irritating me this morning. Check, you got it, you irritated me, okay. All right. So just for those of you that don't know the Finance and Operation Council, we meet monthly, and it includes the treasurer, the financial secretaries, the team leaders of building and grounds, the team leader of technology, the team leader of staff support, as well as a couple of very important ad hoc and at-large finance members. One of the things that we do is we work together as a team to write various policies. And so this type of work falls under the operations category of finance and operations, obviously. And one policy that we wrote and then the Governance Council approved is a gift acceptance policy this year. It tells both the leaders and the congregants exactly how and which gifts will be accepted. One that we're currently working on is a building use policy, and that's going to open up the church after our COVID policies and allow us to write down the who, what, where, and how of people who request access to our space, both the buildings and the grounds. A few of the points about what leadership that sits on our teams have been working on this year that you can see on the slides up there. The technology team is led newly by Bill McClellan. Bill, are you in here? Bill's back there in the back. You want to raise your hand again, Bill, so everybody can see you? Bill and his team have been training new live stream operators and editors. Also, the finance and ops team, we've worked with the preschool team led by Susan Fleener. Susan, happy birthday, Susan. It's her 65th birthday today. We worked with the preschool team led by Susan Fleener and then the preschool director who's employed by the church, her name is Lori Jansen, to approve the purchase of a new operating software specifically for the preschool. It's going to make the preschool run more efficiently. It's called Brightwheel, and it integrates parent communication, teacher records, and very importantly, payment collection. We're very excited about that. So Lori Jansen and Steve Grunke, our financial secretary-elect, they're going to be working to onboard that system over the next couple of months. Also, under the technology team umbrella, the technology team supports staff with IT needs, also supports volunteers with hardware and software. One of the recent things that the financial secretaries are very excited about, they have a computer that was taking them hours to do their work every Sunday morning. So we recently purchased a new computer, and so they can reduce their volunteer workload. So they're very excited about that. The building and grounds team is led by outgoing leader Craig Penquite. Craig, do you want to raise your hand? Thank you, Craig. They've been doing very important work this year. One of the things that they got finished was that they replaced the exterior building lighting. It includes all the packs along the north wing of the building. Honestly, from my mother, Holly, or Warren, I have no idea which way is north right now, but I do know that it's for improved safety and security. Who wants to point to the north wing of the building? Thank you. Okay. We also, technically under building and grounds and under the umbrella of safety and security, we've been working, we formed a new safety team to look at what we can do to improve our safety operations at the church. So on that safety team currently are Randy Wall, John Kraler, Dakota, and I. And these people have been attending trainings related to church safety and gathering information in order to just gather information on what we can do to improve. So building and grounds also has been identifying projects for the coming year. A lot of those include the accessibility projects that a lot of you, probably most of you, participated in a couple of weeks ago, led by the students at Wabash. The other things on that list that they are considering, not necessarily this year, but we sort of have to kind of prioritize based on budget and timeline. But the other things on the list, and Craig can speak to these if you have questions about any of them, include a water fountain, a new water fountain for $3,000, a new water heater for between $8,000 and $12,000, a water softener for about $5,000, and repaving the parking lot for about $12,000. Isaiah, no questions from the back. Building and Grounds has also set up a plan this year to better monitor our energy usage. Very upsettingly, for a period of time last year, we found out that our solar panels were not working, and so we quickly put a plan into place to repair that, and now we have a process for double checking it periodically so the mistake doesn't happen again, but that is in part explains the higher than normal electricity bills that you're going to see. And then finally, our finance committee includes our treasurer and our treasurer-elect and our financial secretary-elect, and I believe those very important ad hoc and at-large finance members, which they are not invisible people. That's, I believe, Susie Storm and Adam Scholl. So the finance committee has been started discussions on adapting the treasurer and treasurer-elect roles to make it so that more individuals can serve. So currently, the system is so that an individual serves a 4-year term. So you start off as financial secretary-elect for 2 years, and then you move to financial secretary for another 2 years, and the same thing with treasurer. However, with the treasurer role, it's a very, very large commitment of time with a lot of daily and weekly hours involved over those years. And so reducing that time commitment so that a person might have the capacity to feel more called to this position could be beneficial and may involve a constitutional change. So we've started talking about that. Also, just think about this and the time that it takes when you see Diane Carr, because she's going off a term of 5 years, so she extended her term. And I'm kind of glad Heather Kane isn't here to see me, or to hear me say what a hard time commitment it is. Is she in here? Oh no, she's online. Oh, Heather, close your ears, close your ears. Thank you, Heather. Jenny already knows. She's seen, so I'm not worried about her. All right. Also under the Finance Committee, Judy Dutras, she's not on the Finance Committee, but as you know, she recently took on the role of generosity team leader. So the finance team has really helped immensely to coach her into her new role and give her an understanding of our budget and money systems so that she could figure out what was needed in terms of generosity so that her team could kind of hit the ground running. And you've seen a lot of the result of that in the generosity campaign that you've seen in print, in your weekly emails, and during worship. Like, for example, the information that you took out of the plate this morning. Maybe the thank you letters you've gotten in the mail, if you have submitted your pledge already. So anyway, let's see, what's the last thing? Oh, and the last thing the finance team has been working on, and questions about that can be asked to Diane Carr, is diversifying the church's revenue streams and investments. So we had, and again, you're gonna really have to ask Diane about this. I can tell you it, but I can't explain it. We had about 300,000 in cash. We had 100,000 of that put into a 6-month CD with a 4.75% yield, and the rest of the cash is in the money marketing at 3%, in money market making at 3%. So that's my report. Do you all have any questions for me or my team leaders? Or are we taking questions at this time? Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So the list of priorities that we have from like a facilities or capital perspective, where it's, repairs or that are needed or things we know we need to go do in the future, I'm sure there's a spreadsheet with the estimated cost and at some point a prioritization of when that will be done. Is that going to come out today or in the June meeting, or when will that come out?
Yeah, it's not coming out today. We can present that at the annual meeting. Mm-hmm.
That'd be great, just to have a clue of what's coming at us.
Yep.
So Kelly, you mentioned a couple of policies that have been developed.
Yep.
Where might those be found?
I believe the building use policy is not completed yet. We're still working on that. The gift acceptance policy, Dakota, do you remember where that one's found?
So it is on the website, the St. Peter's website. If you click on the top thing that says forms or members, I can't remember which, members, and then there's a drop down and there'll be forms, and you can find that, and then there's one that says policies, and you can find the policies there. Yep. Other questions? Ms. Colleen.
I don't know whether this is the category under which to ask this question, and if it needs to be put later, that's fine. But I know there was an appeal in February and March to increase giving for the balance of this year. And I'd like to know how that came out, and if there are still needs in addition to the planning for next year.
Yes, so in a minute after Liz presents about the ministry council, she's going to kind of give her, so under our umbrella we have finance and ops, and then we have ministry teams. So I'm presenting under finance and ops, and Liz is presenting all the teams under ministry teams. And then Judy Dutras is going to tell you how the generosity campaign is going, and Diane Carr, the treasurer, she's going to speak to the budget. So that question will be answered then. Okay, so Liz?
Hi. Did you mean to leave the iPad here? Is that on purpose? Okay, just making sure. So thank you everyone for being here. My name is Liz Chandler. I am the secretary for the Governance Council, which means that I also lead Ministry Council, which means monthly meetings and making sure our ministries have the resources that they need and working to support each other and all that good stuff. So I'll let you read that. I'm not one to read things to you, but I'll just kind of go through some stuff that we've done this year and stuff that we're looking forward to in the season to come. I will also quickly point out that we have several of our leaders here in the room today. Patty Peck, who is our spiritual life team leader. Sarah Scholl, who is our current music team leader. Susan Fleener, happy birthday, who is our preschool team leader. And did I miss anybody? Scanning. David is our current ed team leader. And we'll have information about some changes to some of our leadership here in just a minute. The first thing I want you to know is that a year ago, if I remember correctly, I stood up here and said that we need volunteers, we need volunteers, we need volunteers, we need volunteers. I believe in repeating things to get the point across that we needed volunteers. And I will say that there's been a nice step up in our volunteers. Several of our teams that needed people got new people. Even just recently, we've had some people step forward and say, I want to be involved in this. And that is so exciting. Our hospitality team is growing. We still have needs on all of our teams. And what it means to be on a team is that you're helping to plan the things. It doesn't mean you're in charge of the things, but you're just getting together with the people interested in that area and saying, this is what we want to do for the community and for the church. So we still need volunteers, but thank you for stepping up. And if you want to know what our ministries are doing, please make sure you're on the email list. That's where the main communication is going to come from, are the weekly emails that come out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's where you're going to get information about church. That's where you're going to get information about prayer requests. And that's where you're going to get information about what's happening in the church. So, okay, now let's talk about Ministry Council and what we've done and what we have going on. This is going to be messy. Look, messy notes. That's how I work. First of all, we've already talked a little bit about Family Promise. So we're going to continue to support Family Promise. There's a focus this month. There's fundraising, there's meal delivery, there's collecting housewares. All these things that we're doing, there's so many ways to do it. There is not a, you have to do it this way. We can be so creative and make things happen. Judy and I just shared, I have money for you. Meal delivery, I couldn't do the delivery, but I could help financially, so we split it, right? Like, let's get creative and make all the things happen. Awesome. Earlier this year, we had a Black History Walk downtown with a young man whose company is called Through Two Eyes. That has recently expanded to Carmel, and hopefully there'll be a Carmel History Walk that we can do. There was a generations theme at Advent that our ed team and our spiritual life team embraced and provided opportunities for us to participate in. Our youth group, this is very important. Our youth group has determined that the best tasting Oreo is mint. Preschool has had one of the most fantastic years. Enrollment has been great. Our teacher retainment has been great. Our fundraising has been great. Susan has led the charge on so many positive changes in our preschool, and we're really excited to see what's coming next year. There have been retreats, and there's going to be more retreats. There's mini retreats, there's all church retreats, there's in-person retreats. Like any kind of retreat you might need, we're going to make it happen. We have new members on teams. I talked about that. The ed team has Worship and Wonder up and running, and we have 456 up and running. There will be plans announced soon for the summer. There have been movie nights and all kinds of things happening to keep our kids connected with each other. Music team has continued to navigate us through the world of COVID. The lovely new stoles, the rainbow stoles, are just so eye-catching and wonderful and speak to who we are as a church. We had caroling this year, and just so much work that team does that I think doesn't always go noticed. There will be a youth lock-in coming up. Volunteers. As of right now, there is one person able to be at that lock-in as the adult, and we need more people. So right now, Stevie is our only person who can be there. She's planning it. She's our youth leader. I would love to do it because it is way fun, but my kids would kill me if I showed up at their lock-in. So, them or me, but it's being planned. So if you are interested and you want to know more, you can reach out to Stevie directly. If you don't know how to do that, reach out to me, contact the office, we'll get you connected. The Giving Tree was a huge success this year. And then we had those small groups. those affinity groups and identity groups and whatever else we called them, those are now still getting together. Some of them have, found a real good connection, and they're falling into our ministries. Like there's a foodie group that's going to work with hospitality and stuff like that. So that's very exciting as well. And then things to come this summer, check your emails to see when things are coming, the emails, and volunteer for the things. Okay. We are going to be pulling groups together who want to meet up and go to free concerts, right? Every town has concerts in the parks. Yep. So Fishers and Carmel and Noblesville and Westfield. So look for those announcements to come. Our hospitality team will again plan a kickball and or softball afternoon where we just meet up at a field and play a game. I don't know what the rules might be, and just have some fun together. Summer music. If you have any kind of musical talent, you do not have to already be involved in music. You do not have to sit in the choir, whatever. They would love for you to get involved and offer something for summer music this year. Kazoos, would kazoo playing? See, there we go. There are retreats being talked about if you've been reading your emails, so look for that information. Next month is Pride Month, and we participate in Indy Pride and Carmel, so look for opportunities to volunteer for that, as well as showing up for that. And that's it. So if you have any questions about anything to do with our ministries, our ministry council, getting on teams, things that are happening.
Let Liz take a breath.
Can you just talk briefly about the social media team, which doesn't show up here, but I know also needs volunteers.
Yeah, so social media team is weird because we don't actually land anywhere at this point in time, but there are 3 of us. We have a new member, which is very exciting. John Faulkner, is he here? He was here earlier. Okay. So it's me, Stevie, and John. So anything that you see on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter from the church, we have created that. We are content creating, we are making the words, we have to pay attention in church so we know what to put out there on Monday and Wednesday. So if you're interested in being part of that, it's a great way for the St. Peter's voice to be out in the community. That's who we're serving, are the people outside of here. That's why we don't announce like church picnics or whatever. It's more about who we are in the community and speaking to people outside of here. So thanks. Awesome.
So we're going to move into leadership changes and nominations. And Kelly, do you want me to just run through this, or do you want to do it? All right. Well, we're going to start with our returning leaders. So these are people who are coming back, and we are so thankful that they said yes to staying on board.
Yes, so you can see the list up here. Actually, oh, see, that's why he has this right here. This is so smart. See, technology team right here. You can see it. So yes, President Eric Smith, Vice President. Myself, Secretary Liz Chandler, Generosity Judy Jutras, Spiritual Life Patty Peck, Preschool Susan Fleener, Hospitality Leader Jane Gailey, Technology Bill McClellan, Staff Support Jen Atkinson, and Finance and Ops at Large Adam Scholl. If I just said your name and you're here, will you stand up? Can you give them a hand? Thank you for returning. And then we have exiting leadership. So this means their terms are up. The Financial Secretary, John Kraler. Financial Secretary-elect Steve Gronke, but don't get too concerned about that, because if you see an outgoing Financial Secretary-elect, it means they are probably going to become Financial Secretary. So you'll see him on the nominees on the next slide. Treasurer Diane Carr is outgoing. Treasurer-elect Jenny Terry, same thing. She'll be rolling into the treasurer role. Building and Grounds Team Lead Craig Penquite. Music Team Lead Sarah Scholl. Education Team Lead David Hoff. And Missions Team Lead Carrie Cooley. And then we have various exiting leadership on our senior pastor support team. That's a little complicated, and they're going to meet on May 1st, and they're going to discuss who's exiting and who's staying on. And associate pastor support team, Rachel Inlow is exiting, and Brad Jacobs is filling in. I actually don't know the answer to that one. Yeah, he's coming on. Okay. All right. So I know that Diane Carr, Jenny Terry, Craig Penquite, Sarah Scholl, and David Hoff are in here. Did I miss anyone? Can you please stand up? Thank you all so much for leading these teams. And then here, I'm really excited to announce this part, our nominees for 2023-2024. Like I explained before, for financial secretary and treasurer, those are kind of built into the roles. So Steve and Jenny are going to be the nominees for those. Financial secretary-elect Cheryl Hinton. So she'll be starting her 2-year term as financial secretary-elect, and treasurer-elect Heather Kane, which you all know that she's online right now, so thank you, Heather. And education team lead, filling David's role is going to be Juge Query. So can you give all those people who said yes a hand? And there are people that we're still in discernment and discussions with people about building and grounds, the music team lead, and the missions team lead. So we hope to have an update on that for you by a couple weeks before the meeting on June 18th. So any questions about that? Yes, stand up, please. Yes, definitely stand up for our nominees, which is Jenny Terry. And Heather, yes. Thank you, Jenny and Juge.
Yep, awesome. All righty. Oh, and everybody's favorite topic comes next. It's actually my favorite. We're going to talk about the budget that we have put together. I have to say, before Diane comes up, or before Judy comes up, rather, last year, when we were in this place last year, there was a lot of concerns about our budget for the upcoming year. And we all had some anxiety. We were all in different places spiritually with that. But this year, St. Peter's has stepped up and made an incredible thing happen. We have closed our budget deficit gap by so much. Judy's going to tell you by how much, if it's not above me already. And also, our pledge campaign is going remarkably well for next year already. And when we put these budgets together, I say we, me and Diane and Jenny and the Finance and Ops Council, it is a labor of intense love. If you have ever worked with Excel and you still are breathing, good luck. Because if you were to look at the amazing records that our treasurers keep, I mean, they keep it down to the month, how much we've spent and how much we have left to spend. And truly, it is a good calling that we have had Diane and Jenny come into, so I want to give praise for that. So I won't talk anymore. I'll bring Judy up and have her go through our wonderful generosity update. And I can take over for you on the chat if you want, Judy.
Good morning. Boy, I sure hate to follow people who can speak so well. First of all, I will address the change in the deficit, and I hope that I remember this correctly. I think we had a budget deficit of about 40,000, and now we are down to about 13,000. Is that right, Diane? Okay. And oh yeah, there we go. You can see, I feel optimistic and confident about our pledge so far, our pledge campaign so far. As you can see, 57 pledges. That's 10 people who didn't make pledges last year who have made pledges and committed to St. Peter's this year, which is amazing. And then you can see There are 19 people who have not made pledges who have made pledges previously. And if those people would renew their pledges at the amount that they pledged before, that would be $50,854. I don't have a whole lot more to say. I guess I will say, if you haven't pledged, please consider pledging. And if you don't feel comfortable pledging, but you have been giving, please continue to give, because the non-pledging, as you can see, is really very important. Thanks.
All right, and now, without further ado, our treasurer, Diane Carr.
I'm honored. I'm really kind of sad. This is only the next to last time I'm going to be up here in this role. You'll see me again at the annual meeting.
Bring you back in a couple years.
Okay. After my little respite. Okay, so is it up there? Yeah. So looking first, so at this point in the year, we have actual results for this year through March. We take that information, we project the next couple months to come up with what we think this fiscal year is going to end up looking like from a budget standpoint. We use that to see how we're doing, obviously, compared to our budget for this year, and also kind of as the baseline for our planning for next year. So if you look in the little box on the right-hand side, you'll see where we think we're going to end up from the bottom line. So our budget deficit that we put in the budget this year was a negative $34,600. As Dakota said, earlier planning iterations before we got to the annual meeting, it was as high at times as 50 or 60,000 deficit, and we worked really hard to get it to that level. However, through your generosity and some good money management, we are now forecasting the deficit still this year to be at 20,000 negative. So we've closed the gap by almost $14,000. So that is, it makes us feel in the leadership more comfortable as we go into next year as well. So on the revenue side, as a church, everything all included, including preschool, we're expecting to have brought in $671,000 in revenue. So that includes all of our giving, all of our fundraising, our preschool, everything. And you look at the little points below that, you'll see that giving was up, and this might be more specific to your question earlier. Giving itself was up by $9,000. So we were able to, your generosity was $9,000 more than what we had in the budget. Preschool also came through with, we believe is going to come through with about $6,000 more in revenue. And we did the investments that Dakota mentioned, and that brought in almost $6,000 that we have never had in the past. Thankfully, interest rates went up, and we were able to navigate that and have that money, some of our cash working for us. From an expense standpoint, unfortunately, they too were higher than we had expected. So they came in at $692,000, which was $7,000 more than we were budgeting. And that almost exclusively, not to call anyone out or anything out, but I mean, that is almost exclusively due to utility costs. We have been hit with inflationary costs. I think our usage was up a little bit. So the utility overage from budget was $12,000. Several of those thousand are due to the solar panels that were not functioning properly. And it took a while for us to realize that, and maybe $4,000 or $5,000 of benefit that we were not able to achieve there that we normally would have. So yeah, any questions on how we think this year's gonna wrap up? It's looking pretty good. Okay, let's move on to next year. So this is really not a horrible slide. Y'all liked it last year, but it's just a lot of numbers. So just try to focus here. Go to the upper right-hand corner for starters again. So our total revenue, as I said before, this year that we're expecting is $671,000. Next year, in our budget, we have put in $714,800. So we are expecting a little bit more in total revenue next year than this year. So now looking at all the gobbledygook on the left, essentially the first two main bullets are showing what our overall giving is we expect it to look like. So we are projecting giving based on what Judy had said and your continued generosity and fulfilling those pledges. We project our giving to be about $410,000 next year. We expect that we're going to end this year at about $405,000. So we're not planning for anything materially different than what's happened so far this year. We have hopes and we have some optimism that maybe we can surpass that. So there's some hope there that we're not really stretching too far in this budget at this point. And then the preschool revenue is also expected to be up by about $38,000. They are continuing to do a great job. We're putting in some reasonable price increases year to year to be competitive, but they're also adding a classroom, which I think is pre-K, I'm not 100% sure. So we're gonna be at 100 student capacity, which is our all-time, in my knowledge, high. So that's good. And then the other thing on the revenue side is ministry teams and other revenue. We're planning, budgeting for that to be similar next year at $16,700. Okay, so that's the revenue picture. The expense picture looks like this. So benevolences, which is our charitable giving outside the church to other UCC entities, is going to be about the same. It's been 5% of our giving for a number of years, and we're planning to maintain that. The main driver of the increase in expenses that we see year on year is our personnel. So that's the second bullet point there. So we are expecting personnel expenses to go up by about $42,000. That's a lot of money, but it includes the one extra preschool teacher, and it includes a 2%, which is not great, but it's better than 0, which some of our staff got last year, 2% salary increases. And the real killer here is that we're getting ahead of the insurance costs. So last couple years, we budgeted for kind of nominal increases in insurance, and we've been surprised that it's been more like 7 to 14% increase, not the 2 or something we put in the budget. So this year, we went ahead and put an 8%, and I don't know exactly what it's gonna be yet, but we put in an 8% increase, which I think would be more realistic than what we've been. And then other church and ministry teams, this is all of the administrative costs of the church, is, again, going to be really similar, just a small increase over year on year. So that's about $67,000. And most of that increase there on that last bullet point on the other church and ministry teams is actually the ministry teams. So we have a slight increase in what we're planning to budget for the ministry teams. Because as COVID has been, we've gotten over COVID, teams are definitely involved, focused, and want to spend their money more than they have in the past couple of years. Yeah, any questions on the expense side? I'm not allowed to ask. Oh no! Why, does Craig have to answer the question?
I believe I heard in one of the other reports that there, maybe it's Building and Grounds is looking at opening up the church to outside community use of the church. Will that bring in some rental revenue?
Well, we currently do allow other groups to come in and use the church, some 12-step programs, other programming. It doesn't bring in a ton of money, and I don't know if we're going to go down the whole rental line or not. But I think mostly the policy we are talking about is around more or less free use of the church.
Yeah, it is we put a community revenue line in the budget that we estimate at $1,000, and those are free will offerings that people who use our building put in. With the building use, we've got a draft of it, and we're talking about it this month, and that will be most of the discussion is, are we going to put a rate table in there? Are we going to put some sort of, in order to use it for 4 hours, you have to pay $200. If you're a member, you get a discount of this much. Those kinds of things will be things we talk about. We don't think we'll have it up and running enough to factor it into a revenue line for this year's budget, but it may be something we may collect revenue this year and be able to estimate for next year's. Yes, sure.
Along those same lines, I'm just wondering about using this space for a wedding or a memorial service or celebration of life service. Is that also, now that we're open?
So there are some memorial revenue monies that if we have a funeral and someone wants to make a donation, Lori, to my knowledge, we don't charge a fee of any kind for memorials or weddings, right? No. And that might be in that building use as well. Other question? Juge.
Well, I just noticed under the buildings and grounds expenses, there is a little bit of a difference this year being less. Was there a big expenditure that we had last year that we will not have this year?
No, not really. The main thing there is that we have factored into next year a full effect of the solar panels. Okay. That really represents what we lost in the solar panel benefit.
And since we've mentioned the solar panels many times, I guess I should come over here so they can see me. What happened was the company that put them in used to monitor them for us, and they would tell us if something was off. That company was sold. The new company no longer monitored, but they didn't bother telling us that. So it was not an internal issue in any way. It was dropping of the ball by outside company. As soon as our internal people figured out what's the deal, we fixed that. That's why Dakota said we've got double stuff in place now to make up for outside companies that fail us. Okay, thanks.
That was fast.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, yep, sorry, Jill.
So Diane, is there a projected deficit coming for?
That's the next slide.
It is the next slide. Okay, I'll hold my question.
Yes, in case you're not doing all the math in your head, are we ready to go to the next slide then?
The other thing, just one more thing, I promise. The other thing I will say about building and grounds, because sometimes it gets a bad rap, and they don't deserve it, is almost every dollar of the building and grounds budget is spoken for when you pass it on June 18th. There is very little of that budget that we just go, let's replace this. No. It's almost down to the number for electricity, for plumbing, hardly any of it is discretionary usage. We don't just let Craig run around with 60 grand and say, fix what you want to fix. That is not how it works. So just wanted to say that plug.
Okay. So are we on the next slide? So bottom line, we are projecting a loss, pretty much the same as this year. So $19,000 loss, where we have the revenue of $715,000, the costs of $734,000, and a loss of $19,000. Some of the key drivers I've probably touched on already, but just some of our key assumptions that went into all this are, and some of the bigger drivers are, we did approve last year preschool director salary increase, and we split it half this year, half coming up. So the other half of that is affecting our expenses next year. And then, like I said, the pastoral staff and other staff, 2% salary increase, about $8,000. Health insurance, about $7,000. And I mentioned benevolences are the same. And we already talked, so yeah. And then the interest income, we are putting that now in the budget and expecting that at about the same as this year. That's always been a kind of a non-budgeted item, but now that it's actually material, we assumed it's going to happen.
So Diane, can you speak to both the deficit from this year that we are anticipating as well as what we're proposing for next year? Where does that money come from? Because we still have to pay the bills.
We have $300,000-ish, slightly more than that, of cash. So we go to our cash stores and pay the bills. So essentially, we're just not bringing in enough to replenish all of the cash that we spend. So we're drawing down our cash reserves. Any other questions?
No one's going to be surprised June 18th, right?
None of these people.
None of these
And
folks,
those
anyway.
people.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Well, that was painless. Other questions for the entirety of the group, not just budget related? Any questions that you want to, or thoughts that you need to feel that need to be entered into the space about this town hall and before I pray us out? Other things you want to name? Miss Becky, I can't run to you with the microphone, so just holler to me. Or maybe Liz.
It's okay. Do we know anybody online too?
Yes, there are folks online, and Judy, make sure you check there and see if we've got anybody.
Thank you. Testing.
Yes.
Do we expect to have another student pastor next year?
That's a good question. Lori and I and the teams have not talked about it, but I'll invite her forward if she wants to say something. That would happen again in August, so I don't know yet. Lori, thoughts? That's okay.
My guess is no, but only because we haven't heard from CTS. Again, it's not anything about us. They currently have 15, this year they had 15 total students in all of their pastoral ministry programs. That is extremely low. Most of those are already in their advanced years and would not be doing field ed. So they know that we are ready and willing, and I certainly will be talking with Marty Wright, who is their director over there. But I would be surprised at this point because they've already done enrollment. This is a problem across the country. There are shockingly not that many people going to seminary, and even more leaving ministry. So we are hopeful, and we'll see.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Yes, Miss Judy? Hang on, Judy. Liz is coming to you.
This is from Holly Irwin, and she just thought that it warrants that we remind people what the St. Peter's year is, opposed to,
Yes.
so June to.
Thanks Judy. Very much, Judy. Yes,
Thanks,
Holly wants us to remember that we don't run a January to December budget. We run a July 1 to a June 30 budget. So sometimes that our treasurers are so smart that they can figure out changes that happen in Januaries, and they go, oh, it's only 6 months for us, not a full year kind of thing. Yeah, so other things. Okay, great. All right, leaders, anything? Diane, Kelly, Liz? No? All right, let's pray. God of budgets and nominations, God of the updates and the meetings, of the teams and the volunteers, the volunteers, the volunteers. We give you thanks. We give you thanks that St. Peter's United Church of Christ is at a place in its life where it can continue to do its mission, which is to welcome all, to share your love with everyone, and to help find the Spirit in life. We give you thanks this congregation is an integral and vital part of its community, both out in the world and to each one of those gathered here. We know that as we plan for our next year, as we continue to do the work you have called us to do, we do it relying on you, relying on your wisdom, and your disciples. Amen. All right. You're free to go. Or stay. You can stay and eat more cake if there's some out there. I don't know.